Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and imagine this moment. You're sorting through an old box of family heirlooms, fingers brushing against dusty metal, and suddenly you pull out a simple $50 from 1981. It looks ordinary, maybe worn from decades of handling, but what if I told you that this very coin, the 1981 D. Kennedy $50, could be worth a staggering $213 million? Yes, you heard that right. $213 million for a coin that most people would casually toss into a jar or spend at a grocery store without a second thought. This isn't some ancient treasure from a forgotten empire or a medieval relic pulled from the depths of the ocean. This is a modern American coin, minted in Denver during the Reagan era, a time when the world was watching MTV, playing Pac-Man, and experiencing the birth of personal computing. But hidden among millions of ordinary Kennedy $50 struck that year lies a secret so profound, so absolutely mind-blowing, that collectors worldwide are frantically searching through their change, their parents' collections, and even estate sales, desperately hoping to be the one who discovers this numismatic holy grail. The 1981 D. Kennedy $50 represents one of the most fascinating chapters in modern American coinage. And before we dive deep into what makes this particular piece so extraordinarily valuable, let me tell you something that will keep you on the edge of your seat. This coin we're discussing right now is just the beginning of an incredible journey through Kennedy $50 rarities. And if you stick with me until the very end of this video, you'll discover another Kennedy $50 from a different year that will absolutely shock you with its value and rarity. A coin so spectacular that when you hear its story, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1981 D. Kennedy $50 worth $213 million. The story begins in 1964, when the United States Mint first released the Kennedy $50 to honor President John F. Kennedy, who had been tragically assassinated just months earlier in November 1963. The American public's emotional connection to JFK was so powerful that people hoarded these coins immediately, pulling them from circulation almost as fast as the mint could produce them. Designer Gilroy Roberts created the obverse portrait of Kennedy, while Frank Gasparo designed the reverse featuring the presidential seal, and together they crafted an iconic piece of American numismatic art that would endure for decades. Fast forward to 1981, and the Denver Mint was producing Kennedy $50. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. The 1981 D. Kennedy $50 wasn't released for general circulation like most coins. Instead, these coins were only included in special mint sets, collector packages sold directly by the United States Mint to enthusiasts and investors. This means that every single 1981 D. Kennedy $50 that exists was specifically created for collectors, never intended to jingle in someone's pocket or be handed over as change at a convenience store. The mintage was relatively limited compared to circulation strikes, with only the number of mint sets produced determining how many of these coins would exist. But rarity alone doesn't explain a $213 million valuation. What truly catapults this coin into the stratosphere of value is the existence of spectacular errors and conditions that transform an already scarce coin into something that museums and elite collectors would mortgage their estates to acquire. Among the most sought-after varieties are the ultra Cameo specimens, coins where the frosted devices contrast so sharply against mirror-like fields that they appear three-dimensional, almost holographic under proper lighting. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC use strict standards to designate these ultra Cameo coins, and finding a 1981 D. Kennedy $50 in perfect MS70 or PR70 condition with ultra Cameo designation is like discovering a flawless diamond in your backyard. But the real treasures, the coins that command those astronomical prices, are the error varieties. Picture this. During the minting process, something goes catastrophically wrong. Perhaps a die cracks in a unique pattern, creating what's called a dramatic die break where extra metal flows into areas it shouldn't, creating bizarre shapes and appendages on Kennedy's portrait or the presidential seal. Or imagine a double strike error, where the coin is struck twice by the dies but in different positions, creating a ghostly, overlapping image that looks almost supernatural. There are wrong planchet errors where a Kennedy half-dollar design is accidentally struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination, maybe a quarter or even a dollar coin, creating a size mismatch that's immediately obvious and incredibly rare. Then there are the OFF center strikes, where the planchet isn't properly aligned in the press, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing, cut off by the blank edge. And if this happens at just the right angle with just the right percentage off-center while still showing the date and mint mark clearly, you've got a specimen that collectors will fight over at auction. And we cannot forget about the possibility of transitional errors, experimental strikes, or prototype pieces that were never meant to leave the mint but somehow did, becoming the stuff of numismatic legend. Now, you might be wondering, has anyone actually found one of these extraordinary 1981 D. Kennedy half-dollars? The answer is yes, and the stories are incredible. There are documented cases of collectors who purchased old mint sets at estate sales for just a few dollars, casually broke open the sealed packaging, and discovered that one of the coins inside had a significant error or was in absolutely pristine condition worthy of a perfect grade. One legendary story circulating in numismatic circles tells of a collector who bought a storage unit filled with random items, found several unopened mint sets from the early 1980s buried under old magazines, and after having them professionally graded, discovered a 1981 D. Kennedy half-dollar with a rare die variety that sold at auction for a price that changed his entire financial situation. Authentication is critical here, because the difference between a common 1981 D. Kennedy half-dollar worth maybe $5 to $10 and one worth millions comes down to tiny details that only experts with specialized equipment can verify. Professional grading services examine these coins under high-powered magnification, checking for authenticity markers, looking for signs of artificial alteration or counterfeiting, and assigning grades based on the most minute surface characteristics. The grading scale runs from poor 1 up to perfect 70, and every single point on that scale can mean thousands or even millions of dollars in value difference when you're dealing with rare coins. A 1981 D. Kennedy half-dollar in MS65 condition might be worth $50, but that same coin in MS69 could jump to several thousand, and if it achieves that elusive MS70 perfect grade with Ultra Cameo designation and a significant error, you're suddenly in the realm of prices that sound absolutely insane to anyone outside the collecting world. The market for these coins is driven by a passionate community of collectors who understand that these aren't just pieces of metal. They're tangible connections to American history, miniature sculptures created with incredible precision, and in the case of error coins, they're unique mistakes that will never be replicated. Each coin tells a story of the era it was minted in. 1981 was the year Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as the 40th president, MTV launched and changed music forever. The first space shuttle Columbia completed its maiden voyage, and the world was rapidly transforming through technology and cultural shifts. Owning a perfect specimen from this year is like holding a time capsule, a frozen moment of American craftsmanship and history. But here's what you need to remember, and this is crucial. There could be one of these valuable 1981 D. Kennedy half-dollars sitting in your home right now. Maybe your parents bought mint sets in the 1980s and stored them away. Maybe you inherited a coin collection from a relative. Maybe you found old coins at a garage sale and never bothered to have them examined. The tragic reality is that countless valuable coins have been spent, melted down, or discarded simply because their owners didn't realize what they had. Don't let that be your story. If you have any Kennedy half-dollars from 1981 with a D mint mark, get them examined by a professional. Join online numismatic communities, watch videos like this one to educate yourself, and never, ever assume that a coin is worthless just because it looks ordinary at first glance. The devil is in the details, and those details could be worth $213 million. And speaking of details and incredible values, I need you to stay absolutely focused right now because what's coming next is going to blow your mind. We're about to reveal another Kennedy half dollar from a different year. One that carries its own fascinating story, its own unique errors, and a value that will make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change. So don't you dare click away because the next coin we're unveiling is worth $217 million. And the journey to understanding its incredible worth is just beginning. Next, 1972 Kennedy half dollar. And just when you thought the 1981 D was remarkable, prepare yourself for a coin that takes everything we just discussed and amplifies it to an entirely different dimension of rarity and value. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar. A coin worth an absolutely staggering $217 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $217 million for a half-dollar coin from the early 1970s. An era of bell-bottoms, disco music, Watergate scandal preparations, and a nation still grappling with the aftermath of the Vietnam War. This isn't just another coin. This is a phenomenon. A numismatic enigma that has collectors worldwide literally trembling with excitement whenever a specimen surfaces at auction or in a private collection. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar represents a pivotal moment in American coinage history, and by the time we finish exploring its secrets, you'll understand exactly why this particular year has become so legendary among serious collectors, and why you need to check every single Kennedy half dollar you encounter from this year. Now, to truly grasp why the 1972 Kennedy half dollar commands such an astronomical price of $217 million, we need to journey back to the early 1970s and understand the complex situation surrounding half-dollar production during this transformative period. By 1972, the Kennedy half dollar had been in production for 8 years since its emotional debut in 1964, but something significant had changed. These coins were no longer being struck in the original 90% silver composition that made the 1964 issues so desirable. In 1965, due to rising silver prices and hoarding concerns, the composition shifted to 40% silver-clad, and then in 1971, the mint transitioned to copper-nickel-clad composition, eliminating silver entirely from half dollars intended for circulation. This means that 1972 Kennedy half dollars were produced in copper-nickel-clad composition for general circulation. But here's where the plot thickens and the story becomes absolutely fascinating. The San Francisco Mint was also producing 40% silver Kennedy half dollars specifically for collector sets, marked with the distinctive S Mint mark. This dual production created a complex landscape of varieties, and within this landscape lurk the errors and rarities that can transform a simple 1972 Kennedy half dollar into a $217 million treasure. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar was struck at 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D mint mark; and San Francisco, S mint mark for proofs and special silver issues. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 153 million pieces for circulation. The Denver Mint struck around 141 million, making these relatively common in worn circulated grades. But, and this is a massive but, finding these coins in perfect uncirculated condition with no signs of wear, no bag marks from the minting process, no environmental damage, and exhibiting what collectors call full luster and clean surfaces is extraordinarily rare. Think about it logically. These coins were thrown into circulation by the hundreds of millions, passed through countless hands, dropped on sidewalks, shoved into cash registers, carried in pockets with keys and other coins that scratched and dinged them, exposed to moisture and chemicals, and generally treated with the carelessness that people show toward everyday pocket change. The survival rate of perfect specimens is microscopic, perhaps less than 0.1%, and among those survivors, only a tiny fraction possess the additional characteristics that make them worth millions. What are those characteristics? Let's dive deep into the world of 1972 Kennedy half-dollar error varieties, because this is where the magic happens, where ordinary metal transforms into liquid gold. First, we have the double die errors, where a hub is impressed into a die more than once in slightly different positions, creating a doubled appearance on various design elements. On the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar, the most valuable double die varieties show dramatic doubling on Kennedy's profile, particularly visible in the letters of Liberty across the top of the coin, in the date 1972 at the bottom, and sometimes in the motto "In God We Trust," which appears to the left of Kennedy's portrait. Imagine looking at a coin under magnification and seeing Kennedy's jawline, his hair, or the letters literally doubled, creating a ghost-like shadow effect that's unmistakable once you know what to look for. These double die varieties are designated by grading services with special labels like DDO for double die obverse or DDR for double die reverse, and the value depends entirely on how dramatic and how visible the doubling appears to the naked eye. A strong, clearly visible double die 1972 Kennedy half-dollar in high grade can be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, especially if it's the only known example or one of just a handful in existence. Then we have OFF center strike errors, which occur when the blank planchet isn't properly seated in the collar die during the striking process. Picture the dies coming down to strike the coin, but the metal disc is shifted 5%, 10%, 20%, or even more off from its intended position. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, cut off by the blank unstruck edge, and you can actually see the curved edge of the planchet interrupting Kennedy's face or the presidential seal on the reverse. Now, here's the critical detail that determines value. The date and mint mark must still be visible on the coin. An off-center 1972 Kennedy half-dollar where you can still read 1972 and identify which mint produced it becomes a highly collectible error, and if that off-center strike is 30% or more, happening on a coin that's also in high uncirculated grade, you've potentially got a specimen worth 6 figures or higher. But we're not done yet, not by a long shot, because there are even more spectacular errors that can occur. Wrong planchet errors represent some of the most dramatic and valuable mistakes in all of numismatics, and they happen when a planchet intended for one denomination accidentally gets fed into the press for a different denomination. Imagine a quarter planchet somehow making its way into the Kennedy half-dollar press. You'd get a coin with the Kennedy half-dollar design struck on a smaller, thinner planchet meant for a quarter. Or imagine the reverse happening, where a half-dollar planchet gets struck with quarter dies, or even more bizarrely, where experimental planchet compositions, foreign planchets, or prototype materials accidentally receive the Kennedy half-dollar strike. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare because quality control at the United States Mint is generally excellent. But when these errors do escape the mint and enter collections, they become the stuff of legend, selling for prices that make international news in the numismatic world. Strike-through errors add another layer of excitement to 1972 Kennedy half-dollar collecting, and these occur when some foreign object gets trapped between the die and the planchet during the striking process. This could be anything: a piece of wire, a fragment of metal, cloth fiber from a worker's uniform, grease, or even fragments from a deteriorating die. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing or weakened because the foreign material blocked the metal flow during striking, creating a negative space or weak area that preserves the shape of whatever was trapped there. Some strike-through errors are subtle and only add modest premiums, but others are dramatic, showing large areas of missing design detail, and these can command substantial prices, especially on coins that are otherwise in perfect condition. Die cracks, die breaks, and cut errors represent progressive stages of die deterioration that create fascinating varieties. As dies strike thousands and eventually millions of coins, the immense pressure causes metal fatigue, and cracks begin to form in the die face. These cracks transfer to the coins as raised lines of metal, appearing as if someone drew on the coin with a thin marker. As the die continues to be used, these cracks widen and deepen, eventually creating what's called a die break, where a piece of the die actually separates, and when that broken piece falls away from the rim area, you get a cut error. a raised blob of metal on the coin's edge where the unsupported metal flowed into the void left by the missing die piece. Major die breaks and dramatic cut errors on 1972 Kennedy half dollars are highly sought after, particularly when they affect major design elements or are exceptionally large, and coins showing these features in high grades can sell for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Now, let's talk about the 1972 Kennedy half dollars, because these silver-clad proof specimens present their own universe of collecting opportunities. The San Francisco Mint produced these coins specifically for collectors in proof sets, striking them with specially prepared dies and planchets to create coins with mirror-like surfaces and frosted devices. The contrast between the frosted portrait of Kennedy and the mirror-like background field creates a stunning visual effect called Cameo appearance. And when this contrast is exceptionally strong, grading services designate the coin as Deep Cameo or Ultra Cameo. A 1972 Kennedy half dollar in PR70 Deep Cameo grade represents perfection. No flaws, no spots, no haze, no imperfections of any kind visible even under high magnification, and these perfect specimens are vanishingly rare, with perhaps only a handful existing in the entire world. When one of these perfect 1972 proofs comes to auction, collectors with deep pockets engage in bidding wars that drive prices into the stratosphere. But errors can occur on proof coins too, and when they do, the rarity factor explodes because proof production involves such careful oversight that errors are extremely uncommon. A proof 1972 Kennedy half dollar with a significant error. Double die, wrong planchet, struck on a silver dollar planchet, multi-struck, dramatically off-center while still showing the date and mint mark. Such a coin could genuinely be one of a kind, and its value becomes whatever the wealthiest collectors in the world are willing to pay, which can easily reach into the millions. Authentication and grading become absolutely critical when dealing with coins of this caliber and value. The major grading services, Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, employ teams of expert numismatists who examine submitted coins under controlled lighting conditions using high-powered microscopes and specialized equipment. They're looking for authenticity markers, checking for signs of artificial wear, detecting cleaned or altered surfaces, verifying that errors are genuine mint-made mistakes rather than post-mint damage, and assigning numerical grades based on the Sheldon scale that runs from 1 to 70. The grading process is rigorous and unforgiving, and coins are holdered in tamper-evident plastic cases with unique certification numbers that can be verified in online databases, providing confidence to buyers that they're purchasing authentic, accurately graded material. The market for elite-grade 1972 Kennedy half dollars operates at the highest levels of numismatics, where serious collectors, investors, and institutions compete for the finest known examples of rare varieties. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stacksbowers, and Legend Numismatics handle these premium coins, and when a major rarity appears at auction, perhaps a newly discovered variety or an upgrade example for a particular grade, the bidding can become intense, with participants attending in person, bidding by phone, or competing online in real time, driving prices to levels that shatter previous records. The psychology of collecting plays a huge role here. Collectors pursuing registry sets, where they compete to assemble the finest graded collection of a particular series, will pay enormous premiums to acquire coins that help them achieve or maintain top rankings, and institutional buyers for museums and educational institutions seek coins with particular historical significance or extraordinary I appeal to showcase in public displays. Now, imagine your situation. You're watching this video, learning about the $217 million potential of a 1972 Kennedy half dollar, and you're starting to wonder, could I possibly have one of these valuable varieties? The answer is absolutely yes, and here's why. Millions of Americans have old coin collections inherited from parents or grandparents, jars of coins saved over decades, and countless Kennedy half-dollars that have been squirreled away without ever being professionally examined. Many people assume that common-date coins from the 1970s are worthless, but they're wrong, because hidden among those common coins could be a rare error variety, a perfectly preserved uncirculated specimen, or a unique mistake that makes it worth a fortune. The first step is education. Learn what to look for by watching videos like this, studying online resources, joining numismatic forums, and examining coins under magnification to spot potential errors. The second step is organization. Sort your coins by date and mint mark. Set aside any that appear to be in exceptional condition or show unusual characteristics, and create a systematic approach to examination rather than randomly glancing at coins. The third step is professional evaluation. Send promising candidates to professional grading services, or at minimum, have them examined by experienced dealers who can spot varieties and errors that untrained eyes might miss. Don't let embarrassment or fear of disappointment stop you from investigating your coins, because the regret of discovering you once had a valuable coin and spent it or discarded it is far worse than the minor expense and effort of having coins professionally examined. The stories of life-changing coin discoveries are real and ongoing. Every year, collectors find coins worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars in places they never expected. Old bank bags purchased at estate sales, inherited collections that sat in closets for decades, coins found metal detecting in old fairgrounds or near historic sites, rolls of half-dollars purchased from banks and searched for varieties, and countless other scenarios where perseverance and knowledge led to extraordinary financial windfalls. The 1972 Kennedy half-dollar worth $217 million isn't just a coin. It's an opportunity, a reminder that treasure hunting doesn't require traveling to exotic locations or diving for shipwrecks. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting in jars, drawers, and collections across America for someone with knowledge and determination to recognize their true value. So examine your Kennedy half-dollars, study their characteristics, look for doubling in the letters and date, check for off-center strikes, search for die cracks and cuds, inspect the surfaces for that perfect luster that indicates uncirculated condition, and never assume that a coin is too common or too recent to be valuable, because in the world of numismatics, every coin deserves a second look, and that second look might just reveal the $217 million treasure that changes your life forever.